I'll keep an eye on joiners.
So it's recording.
People still connecting. Hi everybody, hopefully you can hear me. We're just waiting for a few people to join and then we'll kick off. Okay, looks like we're all in now. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to cover verification questions and answers, but the first thing I want to say, or just check, we record each one of these sessions and give people access afterwards, so they're linked through the website. Can you just let me know if anybody's got a problem with us recording it? Please make yourself known, to either sort of step up and make yourself known or put a message through the message board, because if not, we're going to assume that you're all okay with us recording it, and we'll leave it recording throughout the whole session. Okay, nothing's popped up and nobody's made known that they're not happy with it, so we'll press on now. So welcome to this one, verification Q&A. We're not going to do a session with a presentation or anything like that, because we thought it would be probably more useful to just really answer any questions you've got, talk about maybe the move from the old style verification to the new style and the differences there. But really it's more your hour to ask any questions, anything that's concerning you about the verifications, anything like that. Feel free to throw the questions open, and I'm sure we've got somebody on here who will be able to answer it. So I'm going to throw it over to you to start with questions. Brilliant. There aren't any. Everybody's absolutely slick with virtual verifications. Mike, did you want to kick off with some of the sort of points about verifications that you were raising, because some of them are interesting. I get a lot of questions around, has it changed with the move between the old style and virtual and things like that. So some of the points you raised were things that I get asked quite a lot. So I'd be interested to just try those out there and see what people's thoughts are on them.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody. You know, the old way of doing it and the new way of doing it are very much the same. It's just fine-tuning it and slight differences for doing it virtual. But I think just going back, just to reiterate what we've done with the previous sessions, is just make sure that it is only 30, make sure the portfolio is completed, make sure it is within those 3 years, unless there's information to say that although it's over 3 years, the information is still current, etc., etc. Make sure as well that both parties at the lab know what it's about. The training officer knows what it is, the trainee knows what it is. As an external verifier, you're coming to it completely cold. So enable the evidence and the cross-referencing to be easily read. You know, we keep saying about keep your verifier happy. Well, you can't give us chocolate biscuits and, you know, top of the range coffee anymore, but at least you can, you know, let all the information be easily accessed. So that's my plea as well. The other thing as well is justifications. Some people still just reiterate what the evidence is and the justification. That's not a justification for its use. That's just a repeat of, this is a witness statement of me wearing my PPE correctly, or this is a worksheet of me doing an EIA, or whatever it may be. That's not justification for the evidence. So please have a look at those justifications and make sure they're okay. We talked about the 90 minutes aspect, and that still applies with the virtual as it does with the in-person. And I know it's tempting, and I was very much tempted at the beginning to think, oh, crikey, that's great. I've got more time to go through it. I can do it justice. Because my view is that somebody spent such a long time putting this all together. I have to do it justice by going through it properly. But I still, you know, there is a 90-minute aspect to it. So the other thing with that 90, yeah.
Sorry, Mike, can I just pick up the reason for that? That's
Yeah.
we're obviously an education provider for the HCPC, and our routes to registration and everything, all the processes that are attached to that are obviously have to be approved. So in the move to virtual verifications, what we had to do was still bear in mind that that's the approved process. So we need to keep it as close to that approved process as we can, but obviously being removed in the fact that it is virtual. So although examiners and verifiers are maybe getting the portfolio 2 weeks before, we do have to still follow that approved process that you know, to ensure equality across all of the learners, those who were assessed in January and February, as well as those who have been assessed obviously since the COVID period and the move to virtual assessments. Sorry, Mike, I jumped in there. I just thought to clarify why. Yeah.
No, this is fine, and this is what the session's about. It's not, as Josh said, it's not a presentation, it's not a lecture, it's a discussion forum, and people come in at any point, challenge, add, whatever it may be. And just going back to what Josh was saying about the 90 minutes, and what I said before about, you know what it is, your trainee, or if you're a trainee, your training officer knows what it is. You've got to let us know as externals, and we've got this 90 minutes. So the other thing is, the evidence that you provide, make sure it's easy to see. You know, a lot of people, certainly some of the ones that I've done, I've had to ask for the information to be sent again because it's been scanned. There's no reason why people should scan in black and white. You know, I'm sorry, but, you know, if you've done the evidence and it's colour, send it in colour. Otherwise, you're going to lessen the value of the evidence that you've provided, and also make it a bit difficult to read when you're accessing it as a PDF. So please make sure that the PDFs or the other forms that formats that you're sending the evidence through is doing it justice. You've worked hard on this, or your trainees worked hard on it. Don't let it fall down at, you know, this hurdle, this time of the period. Make sure that it's easy to be able to read. The confidentiality aspects are important as well. Just make sure that that's okay. The other thing with the scans as well, don't truncate them. I've had one or two where some of the information on the page has been truncated because of the way it's been scanned. Again, it's the usual thing, really. Before you submit, have a read of it and make sure it's okay. Send it to a colleague to say, okay, I'm going to send this off to the external. Can you read it? Does it make sense? Is it readable? Is it legible? Or is it truncated, or whatever it may be? And then I think the other thing as well is, you know, the bit of a hobby horse of mine is just make sure that the knowledge and the competence are either differentiated correctly, or if you are using competence evidence to subsequently boost or add to the knowledge, then make sure it's evident. And remember, you can't use knowledge evidence for competence. And I think the only other last thing for me, I think Josh mentioned it the other day, was one of the beauties about this system that I think, and there are many, is that you can get a portfolio now, you can go through it, and I've adopted a similar process, is that you go through it, and then to have a bit of a pre-tour debrief with the training officer and the trainee. So if there are any areas that it needs to be rescanned, or the evidence doesn't really tick the box that you're saying it's actually ticking, or actually this is all knowledge in the three pieces, there's no competence there, or any other variation on a theme, you've got this time to discuss it. And then once that information has been edited and received, then you can set a date for the tour. So I think it does lend itself quite a bit for an improvement, should we say, on the face-to-face. But as I say, the only downside for me for the face-to-face is the chocolate biscuits and the coffee. It's quite nice going out and being fed and watered. Although I think most of the time I never actually ate or drank, because I always had this 90 minutes in the back of my mind thinking, if I'm stuffing my face with all these goodies, it's less time on the portfolio, and I'm there to do a job on the portfolio. So yeah, so I think the virtual way is really, really good. There are just a few things just to be kept in mind. So as that a bit of a seed for discussion, and people who are on, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, we've got 11 people here. What are your thoughts? What are your experiences? What do you agree with, disagree with? What do you like, don't like? It's over to you. Yeah, Tamina.
So I've had a couple where I verified some, and I've had some here where we've had external assessors verifying some of our candidates in my workplace, and we've done things a bit differently each time. I would say making sure you've got a good internet connection, because that's one of the things I struggled with when I was verifying someone from another site. And actually, we spent about an hour trying to mess about to get things done. So yeah, we ended up eventually having the candidate take pictures while I was waiting. So they took pictures and then talked through the lab tour. But initially, the plan was to walk around and do kind of a live tour. But just because of really poor internet connection, the laptop wouldn't work. So we tried the iPad didn't work, and then we tried the phone through WhatsApp, didn't work. So in the end, we did it through pictures. But I was just going to ask whether anyone else had any other ways of how they've managed that, or is it kind of similar?
Yeah, I can't see a name, but someone's raising a hand.
No.
Yeah.
It's me, Sonia.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had one virtual one, which is one of our apprentices, and we have a bank of photographs of the lab, and we've used them once before. We thought we needed to use them once before, we didn't, but she used them. She made a presentation, and I think that's expected from her course anyway. So she made the presentation using our bank of photographs, and she talked the verifier through that, and that worked smoothly. We just would not be allowed to take our phones in the lab, so we did it that way. And I think what we're going to try and standardize that, so all our future ones, they will do exactly the same.
Yeah, in my experience, they've worked really well. I've done, because obviously I was responsible for rolling out the move to virtual verifications, and because it was done with a very sort of tight time constraint to it, in response to COVID and the lockdown, we left it open in approaches, but I was very aware that different laboratories had issues of their own about having phones in the laboratory, having, being deep in the bowels of the hospital and not getting any phone reception and all those types of things. So we left it very open for people to, to try things out and to let us know what works. And as a result of that, I've just waded through around 2,000 pieces of feedback from the move. And I've also done a lot of verifications in lots of different ways to sort of test different ways out. And I've done, by telephone, which took longer because the candidate was having to describe everything that they were telling me about. They then had to, before they had to lead in and describe what they were looking at. It wasn't just a case of look at this. I've done actual tours around the laboratory, and some of them were amazing. One of the girls who did it held the phone, but she kept her finger in front of the phone, so everything she was talking about, she was pointing. So she remembered that I was at the end of the phone. It wasn't just the fact that she was waving it around where she thought where she thought I should be looking. She really made a sort of concerted effort to point me in the direction and then to point out what she was talking about. And I've done quite a few, as Sonia describes, where there's laboratory photographs embedded within a presentation. And the best ones of those sort of start with a wide view, maybe the laboratory doors and the security aspects, and then the PPE and things like that. And then focusing in. So, you'll have a few of these photographs, and then all of a sudden you'll have a photograph of a couple of bins, and they'll start talking to you about waste bins. And then you'll zoom out again to another part of the lab, and then you'll zoom in. So they've all worked really well, really, really well. Sorry, Tamina, were you going to add something?
No, that was it. I was just going to ask whether anyone else had different experiences. So yeah.
I think the the nice thing about this is that it lends itself to people's creativity and what they want to do to get the information over. And I think that the other good thing about it is the institutes haven't said you've got to go down this route. They've left it to individuals. Now, obviously, there's aspects of phones in labs and health and safety, but there's also the security aspect, not being able to take a phone, and even though you might be pointing out something specific, there's quite a range of other areas in the shot which shouldn't be in the shot. So I can understand that there are a lot of restrictions in some respect, but that doesn't mean to say that the candidate, can't use their initiative and imagination and run it by the training officer. And as with other the non-virtual training officer, students used to run through it as a practice, either with the training officer or with a colleague, similar to this. Run through the presentation, whatever it may be. If you fail to practice, be prepared to fail, and all the other variations on a theme. But yeah, I think the IT one is definitely one that is interesting. Yeah, it's probably still needs to be finalized, but we have got some really good verifications going on, and I like the PowerPoint aspect. I can see it, and also exactly what Joss was saying. I've had a couple of candidates where they say if you zoom into this part of it, you'll be able to read what's on the notice board, rather than just taking a big picture of all the notice boards. The definition is good that you can actually zoom in and have a look at it. So I think it does lend itself to people being creative, definitely.
I think as time has gone by, it's got a lot easier. During the first few ones that we did in March, we were all finding our feet as well on it. And I've done, as you say, telephone ones, I've done PowerPoint ones, I've done video ones as well, where they've walked around the lab, and they've all worked. But you can see it getting easier and easier, and they're improving as they're going on. So they are. One of the things that I would probably say is whenever the documents are being sent, either for the person that has sent the documents, just ensure that the verifier has got them, and the same for the verifier to acknowledge that they've received the documents as well, because some of the trust firewalls block the documents. Yeah. So it's useful to know that they have been sent.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think I got 3 copies of everything because they were covering all the bases.
Yeah. And probably to pick up on a point that you said as well, for scanned in documents, just make sure everything's in an order, numerical order. After it's got documents and you're trying to work out what page 1, 5, 10 is, and nothing's numbered, and it does add to your time at it. And to reiterate, most of the verifiers are working in labs as well, so they have 90 minutes that they've allocated to do the portfolios. So there is no big advantage getting the portfolio any time earlier, because you have just allocated that 90 minutes and you only have that 90 minutes to do the verification. Probably the biggest advantage I see for getting them that bit earlier is you have that chance now to go back and say to somebody, if something's missing, to say, can you supply me with this, or I need this or that, so rather than on the day where everybody's up to high dough and standing outside the door waiting on it.
Yeah.
Thank you. What the model the way that I now do it, having done quite a few of these, is I wait for the evidence, and I've gone through this on a couple of other sessions. So if you've been on all of the sessions, you'll probably think, oh, here she goes again. But for those of you who are new to these sessions, the way that I do the verifications is once it's allocated to me, I will jump off of that email and speak to the training officer, send an email back to say, I'm really looking forward to doing this verification. How quickly can you get the electronic version of the portfolio to me? And now we're a lot further into this. People are moving to the electronic much faster. In the early days, the candidates had produced for the most part, hard copy portfolio. So there was a bit of a lag time while they translated their portfolio from the hard copy into the electronic one, but now it's much more slick. So as a verifier, I'm finding that people are coming back to me saying, just give us a couple of days and we'll send it all through to you. So then I'm doing exactly as Una says. I'm sort of ring fencing, if you like, 90 minutes to go through the portfolio. I will check that it all opens, that all the documents that they send me open before that 90 minutes, because the last thing I want to do is to sit down in my 90 minutes when the clock is ticking and find that I can't open 12 of the documents anyway. So I run through all the documents, just check that it looks as though everything's there, follow up if it isn't. I'll spend my 90 minutes doing the review, and if it's really well organised and very easy to navigate, then it's an absolute pleasure to do a portfolio. If it's not really well organised, it is an absolute nightmare. And there's nothing worse, you consider your verifier as a reader, and you put them off and you make them grumpy by having to work out what you're offering up for any particular standard and any particular piece of evidence. And straight away, you've lost their enthusiasm for your verification. So try to keep your verifiers on side by giving them a portfolio that's all in front of them and really easy to navigate. I then arrange, depending on what I see in the portfolio, I then arrange, Mike mentioned it earlier, a sort of a pre-verification chat with the training officer and the candidate. And at that point, I'll normally do it over Zoom or Teams, and I'll just run through what the expectations are on the day itself, so that they haven't got all their nerves. They're not trying to deal with all their nerves on the day of the assessment. So we talked through the fact that there's lots of what seem to be overly bureaucratic questions. They have to be asked because they're part of our HCPC approval. So we do have to work through those questions, and that should be the first thing that we do on the day of assessment. But what I do is, in my pre-chat with the candidate and the training officer, I just go through and say, as soon as I see you on the day, the first thing we're going to do is go through these questions. Don't worry about them. We have to do them. They're kind of necessary evil. They're not evil. They're quite gentle questions, but they need to be done. And then we'll launch into the tour, so that on the day itself, everybody knows what to expect. We've already talked about how we're going to do the tour. So I'll negotiate with them whether it's going to be an actual walk around, whether it's going to be a telephone call, whether it's going to be a presentation or something. We will have tested using the Zoom or Teams. We'll have tested our IT a little bit, so we know what, they know how to log in, they know how to access it and all that kind of thing. So hopefully all I'm trying to do is reduce the nerves for the assessment day itself. And then on the day itself, once they've done their tour, call the training officer back in, give the outcome straight away, then some feedback. Don't make them sit there for 40 minutes while you give them feedback and then give the outcome, because that's grossly unfair to our poor candidates who are nervous and probably biting their nails. Give them the outcome, talk them through some feedback, and then all you've got to do is fill out the report form with the information about the tour to go with all the portfolio information that you've done, because you've already done that beforehand, and then that's ready to go in. So we should see a much faster turnaround of report forms going into the IBMS registration team than we might normally expect if people have gone out and done a visit and then written everything up afterwards. That's how I found. As I say, I've done quite a few of these, and that seems to work quite well for me. But I'm just wondering if anybody's approached it in a different way and found that it's works for them in a completely different approach. No, that's excellent. I always dread at this point that somebody's going to say something that that contravenes the HCPC approval that we've got, and I'm going to have a conversation with them. So no, it's great that everybody's approaching it in the same kind of way. There's a certain amount of flexibility, but there's a certain amount of rigidity in with the processes that we've been approved for. Sorry, Mike, go for it.
Yeah, I think coming back to what you were saying, the one thing that I've used a couple of times now is that once you've gone through the evidence you can do your report there and then, but you can also use the report if unfortunately there's some work that needs to be done by the candidate or the training officer. You can send them the interim report. So what I do is I truncate the report so it just has the 30 pieces of evidence as the feedback. So as well as saying over the phone, well, this is, it's not signed and dated, or actually if you read it, it doesn't actually indicate that it was the trainee who was undertaking this particular test, you need to modify it. As well as talking about it, I also send them a copy of the interim report, so they've got something tangible to refer to as well. So when they go back to do the work, they're not saying, what did that Scouser say? I didn't understand what he was talking about, when they've actually got it in black and white in front of them. And also I want to say to people is, okay, I've sent you the report, we talked about it, here's my interim report. If there is anything at all that you don't understand, you don't even agree with, so you come off the call and now you've looked at it and thought, actually, do you know what? I thought it was all right. Get back in touch with me and we'll have a chat about it. Because it's a two-way process. Yes, we are there as verifiers, but it's a two-way process. You have to work with the lab, the training officer and the candidate. Because at the end of the day, as Josh was saying, it's quite stressful for them. And what you want to do is you want to put them at ease and enable them to come through it. You can't be dictatorial about it. You can't be, you know, well, this is the right way of doing it. And if you don't do it my way, then that's it. You've had it. It's about working with people, but giving them as much information and communication as possible, definitely. The other thing that I found as well.
Got any comments, questions? Go on, Mike, sorry.
Just coming back to what you were saying about the IT, one verification I did where there was a problem with the IT, and so the candidate sent me, I can't remember, we were doing it now, they're all merging into one. I think she sent me a Skype, so we're going to do it by Skype. But their firewall prevented the invite coming out. So I got the invite 5 hours after the verification was over. So we did come away to actually, we did it another way by phone. But yeah, it's a good thing to practice these things and make sure that you do work rather than on the day and finding out that you're sitting there not being able to see or hear each other. And then 5 hours later, you do actually get the invite through. It's just the firewalls prevented it for whatever reason from going out.
I've had a few where the reception hasn't been great, and I've said to the candidates before they start the tour, under normal circumstances, I would question you as you do your tour, you know, going along. But if I think that we're going to lose connection, or if the connection is really weak, I won't ask you the questions. I'll save you to the end. But what I didn't want them to do was to sort of sail through their tour and think they'd got off lightly, and then we hit them with a load of questions at the end. So I just make it very clear that, you know, if you don't hear from me during the tour, it's not that I've gone off to make a cup of tea, or that I'm not listening or anything. I will be listening, I will be making notes, and there will be questions off the back of this. But I would just rather they got the tour done if there was any chance of me losing them at any point. So I think that's something, you know, again, it's kind of get a feel for the situation and accommodate the way that we're working as you know, as well as you can, but with some flexibility to support that as well. So as Mike says, don't be too sort of dictatorial. We want to get them there, and the last thing we really want to do is to make them do 2 tours, because halfway through one we lost them and couldn't get them back, and then it was all garbled, you know. So try and work to give them the best experience, because I always think at verification, the point at which they do the tour, in the old days it was all done on the same day, so it was exactly the same, but now because there's sort of 2 parts to the verification, to me the day they do the tour is the day in their heads they become a biomedical scientist, even though they're not registered at that point, and all of that in their heads. That's the day they go from being the trainee to being the person that actually knows what they're talking about. And I want them to walk away from that with the best, having had the best experience and have the buzz from that. I don't want them to carry something through their career that they feel as though maybe they had problems on the day and it was they're terribly nervous and it didn't go as well. And I wouldn't want them to carry that forward. I'd almost like everything to fall in place for them on that day, so that they did the best and they got the best experience, and they walk away from that as the start of their career, because that's the whole point of what we're trying to do, is to sort of set them off in this career pathway. Go, Mike.
Thanks, guys, for getting back. We've got a chat from Joe Thompson who says, could you let me know the best way to put a signature on a PDF document? I am a training officer that will sign each piece of evidence, but some of my trainees' evidence are Word documents. Should I sign a printout of the document to rescan it in? Yeah. So basically,
sorry, Michael.
the evidence should be signed and dated by the training officer and the trainee. So at the point of saying it's good, it should be signed and dated. So if it's scanned, it should be scanned with the sign and the dated bit on it. So, you know, I think that, you know, you've got a piece of evidence, you've accepted it as a training officer, signed and dated, your trainee signed and dated it, scan it, that's it, job done.
Sonia?
Will you accept digital signatures?
I would say, so I've seen some with track changes on them, and the track changes are attributable to the training officers. I'm fine if that's on there, you know, as long as we can track them back and it's obvious where they've come from. If the track changes, you know, they're attributed to people. If they're not obviously attributed to the training officer, then that might cause more of a problem. But, you know, for example, mine come up as JP. It's quite clear that I've fed into a document. So I would argue that it's quite clear that the training officer has put those on. So when you include those, you include them with the track changes live so that you can see all the workings out, if you like, all the that's gone on. And I think sometimes that's quite a nice way of electronically attributing something. So yeah, there are ways around it. It doesn't have to be hard copy. To me,
could you also? I was going to ask. Could you also, like, because sometimes we have signed our signature, and then we could just literally just drop that in on a document.
The only thing I would say, and that's the same across the board with any documentation with your signed signature, be very careful if it's in Word, because obviously people can copy and paste that anywhere, take it and copy it anywhere. So you can either do as I do. I've got several signatures and I know exactly what I use each signature for. They're just, you know, they're just variations on a thing, but it stops people using them outside of the use that they're intended for. But I mean, with a PDF or something, if you did it in Word, signed it with your electronic signature, and then changed it into a PDF, it's much harder then to muck around with it. So if you're the last person to see it, then yes, by all means embed your electronic signature in, but transfer that across to a PDF, so it makes it more difficult.
Yeah, because we wouldn't be encouraging like Word documents, because you can easily change them anyway. So yeah, I think ours would all be PDF now. Thank you.
I think Tamina had.
Yeah, I was just going to say what Jocelyn has just said. So I have my own signature that I just copy and paste into a Word document, and then I save that file as a PDF. So you're not having to print it out, sign it and scan it back in each time. It just saves a bit of time. But yeah, it's just exactly what Jocelyn said.
There's another question from Joe. What's the best platform to upload the portfolio on? Our Trust IT doesn't support Google Drive. Also, if a trainee does a video as part of an evidence, does the IBMS portfolio platform allow this to be uploaded?
So we currently don't have well, no, this is not true. We do have an e-learning platform. It's just undergone a pilot period for CPD modules. We've not piloted it as an education tool with electronic portfolios, but in the background, while the CPD project has been underway, we have been messing around with it and playing with it. So in the future, if we do get access to the e-learning platform, and the portfolios become electronic through that platform, then absolutely you will just upload your evidence into the portal, if you like, for that particular piece of evidence. So you'll be able to upload videos and all different sorts of evidence. Currently, we have left it open to how you share your evidence and what it looks like. We did create quite early on, people said, how do you want us to do it? So we created a couple of templates. We've got a template in Excel, we've got an Excel spreadsheet template, and we've got a Word template. They've worked really well for some people. One organisation, quite a complex organisation, lots of trainees, has actually made the template, the Excel spreadsheet, have made that into almost an electronic portfolio of their own, start to finish for the trainees' whole journey. So it's got the same information the portfolio's got in it. It's got all their training reviews in there, everything all embedded in this one spreadsheet, and they use that there and just release that to verifiers. one of the things that has worked is cloud sharing. So that could be through Google Docs, or it could be through, you know, there's lots of different opportunities, and we're quite happy with that as well, because it means that you're then just sharing a link to something. You're not trying to move emails packed with information backwards and forwards, and the firewalls don't seem to have too much of a problem with those. But it is entirely up to you. There is no fixed way at the moment until we get the e-learning platform up and running. There is no standard way. It's just what works locally. I've had some that I've had the link to, and I've gone in and looked at the portfolio. I've had some that come to me in the spreadsheet, embedded in the spreadsheet. I've had some that have come to me in the Word document, which just looks like the spreadsheet, but is obviously in a different, just a different format and a bit easier to access for some. And I've also had a series of emails. People have sent me emails where they've put the 3 pieces in separate emails. And actually, it's a very basic way of doing it, but it works really well when you're under time pressure, and you can just jump in and out of the emails and assess those 3 pieces. Then you open the next email up and just assess those 3 pieces. So even though it is incredibly basic, it works really, really well. But it's all about making it clear for the verifier to navigate. So if it's quite clear that you've put one section in there, one module in there with the number of pieces of evidence, they're all clearly labeled evidence 1, evidence 2, evidence 3, then your verifier will thank you, however you get it through to them. But just make sure that if you are doing it in that way with the emails, that you're not the 3rd email missing, so you've got 3 or 6 pieces of evidence that have gone astray. So what I tend to do is ask people to number the emails, so this will be 1 of 3 or 1 of 6 or whatever, so that I know if I've not got one on the day they arrive, and then I can obviously go straight back to the training officer. I've not started my review of the portfolio. All I've done is check that I've got the right number of emails and that the evidence all opens. Yes, Samina.
I was just going to say, the last one I did, which was a specialist portfolio examination, they uploaded everything onto Teams, and then they invited me, they sent me a link to join their team. And then after the examination, they just took my name off, so I couldn't access it anymore. But that was quite easy as well. You've just got everything in one place then, and can dip in and out when you need to.
Sonia.
Our apprentices, what they have, their university has, they make them use OneNote. So it's, you know, it's like a book, isn't it? So each tab has evidence 1 or evidence 2 or whatever section and whatever module it is. And that seems to have worked as well. Okay,
that's one I've not used. So that would be, if you can ping me some information about that, that would be brilliant, because I can put that into feedback. So that might be
that's something we're trying to develop ourselves for our trainees, that ones that we have in-house or the ones we have for the year out. So it's something we're thinking, oh, well, maybe we could use that same format because it seems to be working. But yeah, we can send you that info.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. Any other approaches that we've not mentioned? Has anybody got a different approach? Did that fully answer the question? Did you say the question came from Joe? Did that fully answer the question, Joe?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Is there anything that we've not covered really about how a verification might look, or what might frighten somebody? Go, Mike.
Just let me open this chat to see if, oh yeah, it was just a comment from Joe saying, yeah. The thing as well that seems to be asked quite a bit is what can be asked on the tour? What questions can the verifier ask you? The verifier can ask you absolutely anything. They're not going to grill you about the discipline, because as a microbiologist, although I've done it years ago, I don't know the ins and outs of biochem or hematology. So I'm not going to grill you about the biochem or the hematology. That's the specialist role. The competence role is safety, quality, IT, general aspects of, you know, dealing with work on an analyzer, if troubleshooting, that kind of stuff. So if you were to say, right, discipline specific, no, but anything else goes, because you're on, as Jos was saying, you know, that day, a lot of people think that's their first day. And as a biomedical scientist, you're practicing from that day. So you have to know about the safety, quality, IT, and the underlying principles and troubleshooting and whatever else. So yeah, be prepared for anything and everything, and you know your stuff. You know, I have not come across yet a verification where, I mean, the portfolios have been a bit iffy, so we've had a few twos and fro's in getting them done, both as the old system, the one-to-one in the place with the chocolate biscuits. I miss me chocolate biscuits, you know, or the verification. The portfolios have been absolutely excellent, and even excellent after they've been tweaked a bit. But I haven't come across a poor tool, because the thing that I'm impressed with is that the trainees, certainly the ones that I've verified, know their stuff, and I pose questions to them. You know, I don't give them a hard time, but I'm not asking them anything that they shouldn't know. And it's the way that they answer them with confidence, but not arrogance. And to me, that's the profession. They are our future. And at the end of the day, you know, the end of that day, or whatever day they get the registration, they've got a license to practice. And that's what we're all about. We're about making sure that these guys who are coming through are okay to come through, and we're giving them a license to practice. And there's a couple of the markers that I always use is, would I be happy working alongside them in a laboratory? And more importantly, would I be happy with them testing my specimen? So they're the things that I tend to use. And then, as I say, I haven't come across anybody yet who's been a nightmare. They all know the stuff, and they want to do it, and they've worked hard to get there. So I think it's all credit to the trainees that have come through the ranks, and all the training officers who have been there to support them, and all those who are going to come through the ranks as well. There's a lot of really good work out there. And yes, there's a few that need tweaking, but that's part and parcel of the learning cycle, isn't it? Not everybody's going to do it perfectly straight away.
Anybody got any more questions while we're all together and we can answer them? Yes, Sonia.
You mentioned about, you know, the e-learning platform and at the minute, like the CPD e-portfolio, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I think it's really, really good. How soon do you think the IBMS could actually develop this for the registration portfolio?
Yeah, you put me on the spot a bit on this one, thank you. No,
I really think it's that good, you see. So
it's one of those things. So we're just waiting for sort of access to it so that we can start playing on there. We've got it's part of the strategy that we will move to electronic portfolio, so it will happen. But we've fallen sort of in between two things happening, and that is we've got the old version 4 we've got version 4 portfolio 4.2, but we're just about to have the release of the new SOPs from the HCPC. So we're at that point of using version 4.2 as our maybe a sort of a trial pilot, because it would be very easy to break that, put it onto the platform and play with it to see what works and what doesn't. And then to have all of that inform where we go with version 5 once we've got the new SOPs. So it depends how much we release, and whether we release version 4.2 as an electronic one at this stage, in as much as in 6 months' time, it's probably getting towards the end of its shelf life. Or whether we put it on and release it to a few people to sort of pilot it and test it out, and then we use whatever comes out of that for the version 5 and really rethink every approach we have to training. And once we've got the access to the e-learning portfolio, it just opens up so many doors for us for you know, moving education forward and moving it across to the platform and sharing information and monitoring much more. All those types of things, we're going to have much better access to it. So, but I don't know whether externally people are going to see the old version of version 4.2 and we'll see that become electronic, or whether it's just something that a small number of people will get to play about with. Not decided that. I'm just holding my breath at the moment, waiting to see what the HCPC SOPs come out like, and hopefully we've been involved in the consultations, and certainly what we've been involved in just looks like there are just tweaks to them. There's nothing major to panic anyone. So I guess it's less about having to reinvent the portfolio and more about looking at making it better, knowing, you know, working off the back of what we already know about the portfolio and what works with that. So yeah, watch this space. I'd like to get it up really quickly, but I don't know how long it's going to take.
Yeah, because I've seen something similar in, I think it was the Clinical Sciences Training Programme. They had a similar portfolio where their work was uploaded directly and things like that. I like it.
Yeah, I think it'll be good, and I think it will. It will avoid all the sharing problems that we've had, you know, with labs and everything like that. It will be centrally held. Training officers, verifiers, and that can all have access. We, the team, the registration team, and I can have access. So we can, you know, we can check that people are progressing. We can look at how much they've done. So it gives us an earlier intervention point for support if something's gone wrong in the training as part of the training program or something. So yeah, it's so positive. But it's one of those where I don't want to run into anything. I want to get it right, rather than just do it for the sake of doing it because I'm excited about doing it and you know, somebody's giving me access to this e-learning platform. So there'll be a lot of work goes into it. Sorry, Mike, you had your hand up to me.
No, it's okay. There's just another question come in from Afshan. What kind of information evidence is usually requested when it is felt that the evidence doesn't cover a particular standard?
In terms of how might a verifier come back, I suppose, Mike, it would be worth you answering this as well, because you've been in the same boat as me where we've had to go back and ask for further bits of evidence, haven't we? And I guess it depends how we feel the evidence submitted has been short. So what I tend to do is, if I find that a piece of evidence is quite weak, I talk in terms of evidence being strong or weak, and the weaker evidence, it's not that, you know, we forget about it and throw it out, it's that it needs more work and it needs building on. If I go back with my verifier's hat on, not with the deputy head's hat on, if I go back to people, I'll be quite clear on what I think it would take to shore that evidence up to make it a stronger piece of evidence. Mike, do you want to give your side of how you would respond to that?
Yeah, I think the same as what Joss was saying and what we've discussed previously. It's a case of working with the training officer and the trainee, and don't put them down and, you know, oh, this is really bad. Discuss it with them, and largely it's things which are quite, you know, overlooked. And again, my apologies for going back to what previous hubs have discussed, but there's nothing wrong in revisiting just to really make sure that that information is covered. Things like witness statements and personal statements. Largely a witness statement isn't a witness statement. It's a blanket statement that Fred wears his PPE correctly at all times. Well, a witness statement needs something more specific. A personal statement, I've worn my PPE at all times. Well, that's inherent in the job that we do. So personal statements and witness statements need some example, some specific example in there. My hobby horse, the knowledge and the competence one, where largely the evidence has been cited as taking off the competence evidence, and it doesn't. And then sometimes you drill down and then you find out that the evidence provided, although as an external verifier reading it, it's reading that the candidate has got knowledge of the process because they're citing individual tests that can be used. There's nothing there to say that they've actually done the test until you come to the discussion. They say, oh yeah, they're my results. It's my test. Well, there's nothing there to tell me that it is yours. So you've got to make it known. And it comes back to what I was saying almost at the beginning. You know what it is as a training officer. You know what it is as a trainee, and vice versa. I haven't got a clue as an external. You need to guide me through it. Treat me as an idiot, okay? I need all the help that you can give me to get through your portfolio. So whatever you can do to help me understand that it is you doing the job, even a bit of an annotation, you know, my results or tests that I've done. It doesn't have to be, I keep saying about War and Peace, it doesn't have to be masses of, you know, narratives in there or big descriptions. Short. You've got this fantastic piece of evidence. Is it yours? Yeah, it is mine. Okay, then put it in initially. So witness statements, personal statements, knowledge and competence. I think the evidence where it's lacking is basically, more often than not, it's dead simple. You know, the evidence that we get is fantastic, really good evidence. And I think what happens is the writer, i.e. the students or the trainee, and the immediate reader, the training officer, are so focused on it, you don't actually see what's actually underneath the surface. And when it goes to an external person, then you can start to really read what's on the paper. So my view is pass it through somebody else before you send it through for external. You know, give it to a colleague or, you know, another trainee with you, just for letting somebody else have a look at it. But I would say that as I say, that the bulk of the edits that have to be made are those. It's not clear. Quite often as well, the numbers of pieces are pushed, because in a module there might be 6 pieces of evidence and they could be meshed together to make 3, but the way they're presented, it's actually presented as 6, so they've got 3 too many. So again, look at the way the evidence is presented. So it's the nature of the evidence, the content of the evidence, but also the way it's presented. Make sure that you do comply with the 30 pieces. Now, we keep banging on about the 30 pieces, but it is really important, because it could be that you would say, right, you've given me 6 pieces, I'm only going to take the first 3, and it could be a fail, because the best 3 are the last 3, and I'm not going to look at them. But by meshing them together, those 6 pieces actually do come up with 3 really good pieces of evidence. And it could be that you've got a witness statement and a personal statement, but the last 3 are the specific examples. And I'm going to discard the last 3 because I'm only taking the first 3. And the first 3 are quite generic. And the meat, the actual proof that you've done it, is actually in the last 3. So be careful when you're presenting evidence as well, that they do come together, they do mesh. And label things, you know, fantastic bits of evidence, but as an external, I'm not going to teach myself hematology or biochemistry in 90 minutes, but I need to know that this is a Levy-Jennings plot for the month of June's testing of whatever it may be, rather than just coming up with a plot, which, okay, I can spend time navigating it, but I haven't got time, I've only got 90 minutes. So whatever you can do as a trainee or as a training officer to make that journey for a verifier as simple as possible, then do it. So keep your verifier sweet, keep them happy. You're not feeding them chocolate biscuits. I keep going on about these chocolate biscuits. You're not feeding them chocolate biscuits anymore. So make it pleasant for them to actually read what you're going to read.
Does that help? Does that answer it? I would expect if you release some evidence to a verifier and they come back, I would expect them to be quite clear in what they believe would turn that piece of evidence around. So it shouldn't be that somebody just says this evidence is not good enough. They may do if it's across the board. If you've got a very weak portfolio across the board, it could be that the verifier says, you know, I don't have time to go through every single piece of evidence and tell you what's wrong with it. But in my experience, with the odd pieces of evidence that need to be strengthened a bit, I would go back and say, look, you know, this, if you did this, this would strengthen this piece of evidence. So it should be quite clear where the shortfall is. Go, Mike.
Yeah, the other thing with that, with the feedback to the training officer and the trainee, I've had some really great experiences with training officers. Oh, do you know what? I didn't know about that. I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, I know where we've gone wrong. Actually, do you know what? I've got another portfolio. I'm not going to put it forward because based on what you've just told me, the second one's basically the same as the first one. So I'm going to get them to alter the second one. It's a learning exercise both ways, and it's about how you approach it. If you come down, well, I'm the verifier, and this is the way you're going to do it, you're going to put people's backs up. It's working with the training officer and working more importantly with the trainee, because it's their portfolio. The last thing you want to do is put them down. And as I say, you know, the majority, probably all of them, some of them need tweaking, fantastic bits of work. It just needs a bit of help. And sometimes it's the first one from that laboratory. You know, they haven't done it before, So it is a learning exercise all around with them. They've never done the portfolio as version 4.2, and this is their first one. So it's about giving people help. It's working with people, not against them. Work with them and help them.
We've got 5 more minutes to answer any other questions. Has anybody got any more questions? No, that's brilliant.
Oh, hang on, we've got one.
Okay.
It's from Afshan, who asked about the evidence being repeated, or he said that was very helpful. Thank you.
If you didn't catch our one of these sessions on evidence, in fact, we've sort of covered it in a couple of them, haven't we? Different types of evidence and that. We had a dedicated evidence session last week. So the video, that was videoed, and the video for that is available. The links, I think, are on our website and are going out through social media. So it might be worth looking back over some of those. Certainly the evidence one contains pretty much everything you ever needed to know about evidence, and set you up for doing your portfolio or supervising somebody through their portfolio, what to expect, what it should look like, what it shouldn't look like, and how the verifiers will look at it and view it, and what they're looking for when they're doing it. So hopefully that evidence one will be useful to anybody who's either about to prepare evidence or about to support somebody else who's also preparing the evidence. Tamina, is there anything you wanted to add about verifications or?
I think we've covered it all, haven't we? Unless anyone's got any other questions.
No, I think everybody's happy. If any of you have specific queries or problems or anything you want to talk through, there is a huge amount of support at the Institute. We've got an education team. Feel free to ping them an email if you need some support or some advice or something about evidence or verification or anything like that. And I'm also available again through the registration team. They'll ping it on to me if I can help in any way. Obviously, I've got a massive network of tame verifiers. We've got over 500 verifiers and over 500 specialist examiners. So, we really do have a fantastic network. I'm always encouraging verifiers to step up, because I never have enough stepping up to manage the number of portfolio verification requests that we have in. So if any of you are verifiers on here, I'm going to plead that you step up and take some, because the faster we obviously get them verified, the faster we can get people on the registers and move them forward in their careers. But yeah, that's my, I'll stop begging now and I'll hand it over. If anybody's got a last question for the last couple of minutes, we've got 2 minutes, please feel free to ask it. No, I think these answered everything. So I'm going to wave goodbye to everybody. Thank you for coming again. We'll have a new set of these in the new year. We're probably going to run some of these again. So, if you've missed one and you don't want to catch it on video, keep an eye out, because we will be probably running this pretty much the same subjects over the next year as well. So hopefully see you all at some of these in 2021. Oh gosh. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.